The Warframe Anniversary event is coming to an end, and now is the last week to get our free loot. This time, we're looking at the bullet hell of a weapon, the ultimate screen shake machine, the Dex Furis. So, in this guide, I'm gonna show you how to get the Dex Furis for yourself, how it works, and I have updated 2026 builds. Big shout out to all our generous channel members, and now, let's jump right into it. Okay. First things first, real quick, for one last time, how do you get these Dex weapons? To get the Dex Furis for yourself, all you need to do is walk up to your navigation console in your orbiter, and then you will see an alert popping up at the top right corner of the screen here. The video clip you're seeing in the background is pre-recorded, so the Dex Furis itself is not visible on screen, but for you, when you log in right now, it will show up right here. Just play this simple low-level mission, and you will get the Dex Furis for yourself. However, even if you don't really want it, or you already have the Dex Furis from a previous year's event, then I would still highly recommend to play the mission anyway, because all of these anniversary Dex weapons come with their own inventory slot, so what you can do is just get another copy of the Dex Furis and then sell it off and keep the free slot. But now that you have the Dex Furis for yourself, let's talk about how it works and what you should know before you start playing it. And to be honest, there's not really all too much for me to say here. The Dex Furis is a fully automatic akimbo pistol with a very high fire rate, and as you can also see right here, it puts a lot of bullets down range. This, however, comes at a bit of a cost, and that is the immense recoil and spray of the weapon. As you can clearly see, the biggest bottleneck for our DPS with this is not that the bullets are too weak, is that beyond 10 meters, your DPS is just gonna land in the wall. And where usually we would use an excellence mod on the weapon like Steady Hands to reduce the recoil, on the Dex Furis that's hard to do because with this high fire rate, the thing chews through your ammo supply as if it is nothing. So we're kinda sorta forced to use pistol ammo mutation in the excellence instead. Now, let's also take a quick look at the stats, and unfortunately, what we see right here is kinda so-so. On the one hand, we have very high fire rate with good status chance, that is a strong combination, but then on the other side, the crit performance leaves a lot to be desired, and also the base damage coming in at only 16, that's not all that great either. However, before we get to the builds, there is one more important info about this weapon that you have to know. The Dex Furis is not considered a subvariant of the single-handed Furis. Instead, the Dex Furis is a subvariant of the A Furis series, including the normal A Furis and the A Furis Prime. What this means for you is that a Furis Riven will not work on the Dex Furis. You need to look out for an A Furis Riven instead. And unfortunately, this also means that both the Incarnon Adapter as well as the Syndicate mod Winds of Purity, those two also just go on the normal Furis and not on the Dex variant. But alright, let's finally get to the more interesting part of the video, which would of course be the builds. I have multiple ones prepared for you, but first of all I want to get into a beginner-friendly build because as it is the nature of Dex weapons, they're available early on and therefore often used by newer players. And this right here then would be an example of how one of these beginner builds could look. We go for base damage as well as multi-shot, then a little bit of crit with Pistol Gambit and Target Cracker, and the rest of the build basically comes down to who you're up against. In my case, I went for Corrosive with 2 Toxin mods as well as an Electricity one, and a Grineer faction damage mod. Also here again, with the Dex Furis and the high fire rate that it has, we're kinda sorta forced to use pistol ammo mutation because otherwise we're gonna run dry very quickly. While this beginner build is definitely not terrible, and you'll have no issues going through the star chart with it, it does unfortunately fall off relatively steep at some point. So let's take a look at what we can do with some more investment in the higher level range. This right here is a build using secondary Enervate in our Arcane slot. Given the fact that the Dex Furis doesn't really have a good crit chance, that means secondary Enervate is tailor-made for it because it is a flat crit chance increase and therefore doesn't care about the low base crit chance. The rest of the build then is built around this feature, where of course we go for crit damage, but we don't mod for any crit chance because that is solely coming from Enervate right here. Also here, we go for base damage as well as multi-shot, but then for even more status chance with Galvanized Shot, heat damage with Scorch, and then we turned this whole thing into a status damage over time build using an Elementalist mod as well as a faction damage mod. This way, we're having a pretty high status chance with good fire rate, multi-shot, and we're gonna deal quite some decent damage over time with it, especially given the fact that we're gonna hit orange crits with the Arcane. If you wanted to, however, you could also always go and drop the Pistol Elementalist mod and instead go for a Corrosive build or any other element that is non-DOT. Overall, this build is a definite improvement because Secondary Innovate solves the biggest issue of the weapon, that being the low crit chance. Unfortunately though, the very low base damage still hurts quite a bit and prevents it from really hitting those big numbers. Now, just as a side note right here, I also made a build using Secondary Irradiate because I thought maybe some AoE capabilities could help the weapon, but as you can also see right here in the background, it just really doesn't hit those numbers. You might swap out 1 or 2 mods of these here and it would still not work. Plus, in order to apply the radiation in the first place, you gotta play a Warframe that can do that, and that is very limiting. However, I have one final build for you. And usually when I present multiple different build approaches with a weapon, then my verdict tends to be it comes down to personal preference. Not so here though. Because with the Dex Furis, this one right here, in my opinion, is the objectively right build to play. What we do right here has heavily to do with Secondary Encumber. This one makes it that whenever we trigger a status effect, we have a chance of getting a second random one. And given that we have 100% status chance with a whole bunch of multi-shot and a 32 rounds per second fire rate, well, you can imagine that is going to be an onslaught of status effects. The reason why this is so good is because we're using Galvanized Shot. This one gives us more base damage per status effect, and because it is the pistol version, not the rifle version, we're actually getting 3 times 40% damage per status effect, not just 2. And with the crazy status application, it is not unseen to get over 1,000% bonus damage from just this mod alone. It is crazy, it outclasses Hornet Strike so hard that you don't even feel that this one is missing on the build. For the crit portion here, we're actually going for Galvanized Crosshairs, because if you nail those headshots, then you're gonna get a sweet plus 320% additional crit chance, which is much more than you would get from Prime Pistol Gambit or Creeping Bullseye right here. And in order to really nail those headshots, because, remember this thing is very unprecise, we add cold damage, which is actually a super secret hack that I recently learned to appreciate myself. This makes it so easy to nail those headshots. If you inflict cold on the enemy, then they're not stumbling around like crazy all the time. And it's just such an insane quality of life improvement, especially on heavy recoil rapid-fire weapons like the Dex Furis. Rest of the build though, pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna go for Pistol Pestilence and Jolt for Corrosive because it's supposed to be a example build against Grineer. And then this last slot right here, this is kind of sort of flexible. I went for Lethal Torrent because more multi-shot and more fire rate means even more status application and more DPS. But if you wanted to, for example, go and turn this whole thing into a damage over time build, you could go and put a faction damage mod here, or literally whatever you like. Do with it as you please. Now, before we end the video, I have one more relatively important message for you if you're thinking about building the Dex Furis, and that is, maybe better don't. See, the thing with the Dex Furis is that there is an objectively better version of this weapon available in the game, in the form of course, the A Furis Prime. If we compare the stats, we have better crit, better status chance, and much higher damage. For a veteran player, there's really no need to use the Dex Furis instead. However, if you're still relatively new in the game, then getting the Dex Furis for free with Catalyst installed and inventory slot can still be quite enticing, but then you're running into another problem. In order to really get good damage numbers out of this thing, you absolutely need an Arcane, you need the Excellus slot as well for the ammo mutation, and then we're also talking about a bunch of Forma, because with the requirement of an ammo mutation mod, your average Dex Furis is a 9 mod build, not just 8. And this then brings us exactly to the dilemma. With the Dex Furis, we have a beginner weapon that has the potential to be good, but needs so much investment for it that a beginner would never be able to do it. And then a later game player who has access to all the upgrades that you need to make it good, well, that player will also have access to the Furis Prime and then just pick that because it is objectively better. In my personal opinion, I would rather save up on the forma and invest those into other Dex weapons that are really worth it. For example, the Dex Furis, which becomes endgame viable with the Incarnon adapter, or the Dex Nakana, which is a very unique and useful tool. And if you're still a beginner and need some good early game weapons, then check out this video right here. Another massive shoutout to Niels V, Demon Ortel, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostanix Gaming, Turtle Pier, Undercaneo2, Scala Bowser, Mihaki, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morazaki, Shadow Lockhart, Antares, Patrosator, Boomy1, Mr. Games, Zave, Amidai, Zengen, Quax, Henrik5984, Blue Eagle 98, Hearthwield, Everin8802, Gabriel Tevez, Yaku Ivan Gonzalez, Candy Fox 19, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other hopefully in the next one, and have a good weekend.